the sun is shining 24/7. 'Cause when we're together, it feels like we're in heaven. If it will get dark, you'll be my million stars. I know I can lean on you. Oh, you catch me like a leaf falling from a tree. If I'll be a shooting star, you make a wish. No, I don't fake this kind of feeling, never felt so real. My heart is on the table 'cause you're my everything. I do, I wanna marry you. 'Cause when you're around, I know it's true. The way you make me feel is so good, baby. So good, so good. Every single day we spend apart, I wanna be with you. Baby, take my hand, hold it tight just like you do. Feels so good, so good. When I wake up in the morning and I see your face, I'm becoming blind by your dazzling grace. What a beautiful feeling to be close to you. There's nothing else I wanna do. Ooh, and from the fields of flowers you chose to pick me. You're spreading sugar on my misery. And I don't fake this kind of feeling, never felt so real. My heart is on the table 'cause you're my everything. I do, I wanna marry you. 'Cause when you're around, I know it's true. The way you make me feel is so good, baby. So good, so good. Every single day we spend apart, I wanna be with you. Baby, take my hand, hold it tight just like you do. Feels so good, so good. And I do, I wanna marry you. 'Cause when you're around, I know it's true. The way you make me feel is so good, baby. So good, so good. Every single day we spend apart, I wanna be with you. Baby, take my hand, hold it tight just like you do. Feels so good, so good.
Well, good evening. Hi. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm Lee Love. I'm your host for Photo Mentor TV. We do this every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, and hopefully you're joining us live. If not, still appreciate you joining and watching the replay. The purpose of this show, if this is your first time here, is to basically cut through the BS, the photo BS. The goal here is to give you straight answers on things that'll help you to become a better photographer. And these are things that we usually focus on the artistic aspects of photography, not so much the technical aspects, although we can cover that as well if you have questions on that. Anyway, glad you're here. Thrilled to have you. And tonight is a special night. We always have a lot of fun tonight. Tonight is photo review night, and this is where we do photo reviews of the work that you guys have submitted. And just a reminder that, you know, the idea here is to help you improve your work It's to give you some kind of professional feedback, either art and on the artistically or technically on the aspect of your work, and also on the storytelling. And it's not whether I like the photos or not, it's really whether they work or not, whether they're conveying a story, whether they work, again, using composition and the tools that we have available for us as photographers. The way that the images are looked at, they're used. I use the 7 most common guidelines in art and design, and that's looking at line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. And then, of course, the rule of thirds and the golden ratio. So we'll talk about all that kind of stuff. But anyway, the point is that everybody's images are looked at the same. It's not whether it's a pretty sunset or not. It's whether the image really conveys what the photographer is trying to communicate. So anyway, I think you guys will enjoy this quite a bit. So I guess I think if you're just watching us here for the first time, and depending on what platform you're on, you can find us on facebook.photomentor.tv, or you can watch on YouTube, youtube.photomentor.tv, or if you're a business type person and you're on LinkedIn, join me over there at LinkedIn as well, at linkedin.photomentor.tv. See how that works out? There's kind of a thread going there. Anyway, glad to have you guys here. So might as well get started instead of going through all this stuff. So tonight we've got a lot of great submissions. I'm really pleased with the work you guys have submitted. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know it's a lot of hassle to upload the images and everything, but I think it really... The idea is, let me make a couple comments about that, because I think there's some misconceptions. Number one, this is not a contest. This is not about whether who wins or not, okay? That's why I do this anonymously. I don't want to use your name because I want people to learn from the work, not from the person. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, there's no right or wrong in any of this. In other words, it doesn't matter if you're just starting out, if you just bought a camera yesterday, or even if you're using a cell phone. It's not about the gear, it's about the images and whether they work or not in the composition, and learning to see, and more so than the equipment. So anyway, that's why I encourage you guys to submit your work, and I think most people find it beneficial. I will say, let me mention one other thing, and that is that if you look at the images that we're going to look at tonight, there's 2 ways that you can approach the images, okay? If we look at them technically, for the most part, this is what you find most photographers talking about, and that is the whole left hemisphere of the brain, kind of manual mode. Oh, you got to shoot on aperture priority and all this kind of stuff. And that's important, but it does not make a compelling image. What creates a compelling image is the emotion of the image and whether it connects with somebody. And that's done through this language of line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color. So by using these tools, we're able to convey certain things in our images. And that's what I want to get across to you guys tonight. That's why I use that as a guideline, because it's standard, and also it's used in the art world, but also everyone's images are judged the same then. It's not, again, whether I like it or not, it has no bearing on it. So anyway, all right, let's look at our first image tonight. And our first image is this one right here. This one was submitted, and again, by HJ. HJ's been shooting about 5 years or more. And I like to ask what compelled the person to shoot this thing. What was it about the image that they liked that drew them to the photo? And what drew them to this photo specifically was the fact they were trying something different. I guess they don't normally shoot flowers, that type of thing. And so they were trying something different, and they wanted to see it, messing around with the framing instead of putting it right in the center. And so the question is, does it work or not? And I think it does work. And I think it works for a number of reasons. But first of all, I think it works because of course, the shape of the image. It really kind of pulls the image right out there. and draws you right to the image. I mean, you look at it and you see where it comes from. You see that it's not centered, so your eye is drawn directly to it. It's also the use of negative space. Negative space is something that comes in when you're looking at a lot of images. You'll see this used a lot in advertising and things like that. But instead of putting it right in the center, the image, the person is drawn directly to the image based on the negative space to the right or the left, or however you place it. Again, I think the shape also is very interesting. You could say that the lines that of the petals draw you to the center of the image as well. So I'd say, HJ, this image does work. And of course, I can't go without mentioning the color of the image. It's very vibrant, and that of course has a lot to do with it, of why the image works as well. Now, whether it tells a story or not, I'm not sure. That's up to the individual. One of the big things that you'll see me focus on a lot is this concept of see, tell, expose, process, meaning the scene and the telling are the two most important things. So HJ obviously saw something here, was drawn to this image, and was trying to tell a story with it. I don't know how well the story compelling part comes out, but that doesn't mean that the image does not work, and it does work, I think, very much. So good job on this one, HJ, really nice. And technically it looks like it's exposed properly, and again, draws the eye very much to the image. So good job on that. Let's see. Allie says that the image is kind of hard to see, and when you so hard to get right. Yes, I agree. When you're photographing, and there's certain colors. If you watched the, let's see, 2 weeks ago, I think we did 2 or 3 weeks ago, we did the quiz, the trivia show we did on. I think I try and do that one on the third Thursday of the month if I can. And we talked a lot about something called a Bayer filter. And a Bayer filter is what generates the colors, what creates colors in a photo on a digital camera. Without that, all digital cameras would be black and white. But anyway, yes, yellow is very hard to get right. And it's, again, you'll find this in skin tones a lot. A lot of cameras have unique color, what's called color science. So it's not just, a lot of people think all cameras are the same, like, oh, the Sony looks the same as the Nikon, or they like them better, or the Canon's more vibrant colors. It's very, very different. And that's all based on the way that the camera manufacturer takes that data coming off of the sensor and processes it. So you'll find that the skin tones on a lot of cameras are very different. And you can correct it somewhat, but does not have to do with white balance. I'll be like, oh, I just correct it in white balance with RAW. That's not the case. That does not fix everything and does not correct for everything. That's why there's something you use. It's a color chart. I have a sort of one here. Looks something like this. Okay. And you use this to calibrate your sensor, and also it's not just about white balance. So these are specifically matched, okay? And so you can look at this and you can measure this with Photoshop and measure whether the color is accurate or not. And you can have two cameras actually side by side, same manufacturer, and they may be slightly different. So it's not usually an issue for most of us because we're artists, right? We're trying to make our impression of what the image looks like. We're not doing scientific photography here, and we're not a Xerox or copy machine. But if you're doing product photography and you're trying to match a Pantone color, it can be a little bit of a challenge for you. So anyway. See, Allie, you didn't realize you were going to start such a big conversation where you're just talking about the color yellow. Anyway, so, yeah, thanks, Andrew. Andrew says that his eyes are drawn to the flower center. Mine, too. That's exactly right. And I think that has to do, again, quite a bit with the fact that it's the lines in the image the shape in the image, and the form of the image. I think that's what does it. The composition helps, okay? The fact that it's over to the left, that it's in the third of the image, it might be able to come up a little bit, but it's not too bad. And anyway, so I think it definitely works. So good job on that one. And thanks very much for submitting that. I appreciate it very much. Yeah. Okay, Allie. So I'm not making fun of you. I'm just playing here. Okay, let's look at the next image. The next one is by KN, and KN has been shooting about 3 or 4 years. And what they were trying to do with this was capture the essence of this car. It's obviously a Corvette if you're a car person. And it was built by this man and his dad, so it obviously has a lot of meaning to it. And even though it's a classic and probably worth a lot of money, it was really built to be driven. And so that's that was the deal here. So a couple of things about this image. Number one, the composition is nice on this because it does. It is, you know, kind of leading into the image here a little bit. Let's see here. I'll show pull it into here. So if you look right here, so you do have. Let's see here. I can put a brush in here. I can kind of show you what I'm talking about. And color. Let's see, make a red. Okay. So you can kind of see that you've got this. Whoops. Sorry about that. Brush. Got to pick the right one. Here we go. Paint brush tool. Okay. So you can see that it's got, you know, these lines here that bring you right to the picture, to the image, and that of course works. Instead of being straight on, you've got these lines. Also the fact that the car's in motion. I like that the background's a little bit out of focus or a little bit blurred because of the motion. I think that really helps tell the story of the image. Because, you know, if the thing was shot and this was everything was sharp, then it wouldn't really, it looked like a poster, right? It wouldn't look like a car that was actually being driven. So, so I think all of these lines work here. The background's not too distracting. One thing I always look for is the image dark, is the background darker than the foreground? Because most of the time, that's what draws your eye, the light part of the image. So I would say that the lines on it works for this image right here, and I'd also say that the shape also works here. There's a good use of shape and also good use of space. So anyway, now something that you could change on this one, if I want, so as far as the story is concerned. It would be nice to be able to see a little more of the man's face, because there is a story behind this car, and so that would be nice if that was the case. But you know, that's not bad. It's not that, you know, draw us a showstopper as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, so I think this works pretty well. You could, you could also shoot this from the side. I could see if this was a tight shot of this car with the person's face, and you know, if you had you can't do it from this image because of course it's you can't crop it from here. But let's see here, it's the wrong one. But generally speaking, I'll just kind of show you also. You kind of want this thing to look a little bit like, okay, so you can kind of look at it here like this, and you could, it'd be interesting to see, again, if it was shot a little more from the side, not from this perspective, of course. I'm not talking about from this perspective, but if it, like something like this would also kind of help tell the story a little bit as well. So again, I'm all about story on these things if you guys haven't figured this out. But you don't have to show everything in the image to be able to tell a story. I think something, so if this was, I've done not a lot, but I've done some car photography, and it's a real challenge. but but so if you were to shoot it from the side a little bit and you still have that blurred background and you see a little more of the person's face, it might have an interesting perspective on that as well. So anyway, just a thought. Now the second image this person submitted is this one right here, and the subject here was that they said there was a pre-race practice session for some friends of theirs, and the goal was to capture some activity that happens off track, and that's a lot of fun. I really like doing that kind of work myself, and so I think that makes a lot of sense. There's some things about this image works for a couple of reasons, but there's also some things about it that it could be improved on. Again, when one of the situations with a lot of images is there's too much information. So my question is, does this really tell a story? And what is the person? Are they going into space? I mean, obviously they're not. Obviously it's a racer, but if it is, so in other words, like, okay, can you tell the story this way as well? All right. And again, is the person the most important thing? What's the most important thing in the frame? Okay. So I think that in a lot of ways, it's the person's eyes. I mean, I think that tells a lot of the story that way. So again, you can still tell there's racing. They're a racer. You can still tell that they're geared up to do something, but it's a much more intense image that way. You could also go in and darken some of the background a little bit and draw attention to the person's face a little more. But so again, you don't always have to have show too much in the image. And if you were to do it, I don't know if this would work on this image or not, by the way. Whoops. But you could, let's cancel this. You could do this way as well. Kind of put it a little more in this perspective. And this might also make it a little more intense. So now you've got this triangle going on here with the arm, and that always is useful. So you've got let's see here. You see, you've got this right here like this. I don't know why this thing keeps changing my color on me. Okay, so you've got this triangle going on here. And a triangle is very useful in photography because, again, it kind of draws your attention to whatever's at the triangle point, which would be here. And again, the face is really the most important thing. So you could go in here. And again, these are just some suggestions. You could go in and adjust the exposure, darken it down a stop or two, and then put a mask on it, which is the way I usually do these kinds of things. I'm sorry, I'm not. This is not a Photoshop lesson here, but if you go in here with the and add a filter or add a mask to it, brighten up just the face, for example, which I've kind of done the backwards here. That could also make this a little more intense. So again, just so you can kind of see what the difference is, it looks like this, or like this, okay? So you can see if you take the whole thing, the whole image, and you can see whether or not it really works for you or not. But anyway, just an option. So again, using, there's a couple of things here. I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not, but there's something called the golden spiral. And the golden spiral will take and allow you to take and shift this around, and what you want is right here. You want this you want the object of the eye to be right here in this spiral part. And I'm not sure why it's not reset. I should be able to rotate that, but for some reason it's not rotating. I don't know why. Anyway, so if you place your subject here, a lot of time this will also be very, very and help you with your image. So you can I can kind of rotate it this way. Okay, but really what you want to do is, if we have this applied like so, you'll find, and this is not a great example, I'm sorry, I apologize because I'm not doing this right, but this, I would flip this around and it would be on this side, not the other side. So anyway, pause. I've messed this up here terribly. Wrong, bad example. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make here is, by composition, you can draw the person's, the viewer, where you want them to look. That's the most important thing you're trying to do here. You're trying to get the person to look at what you want and describe and make that the important part of the image, not what they want. And what I find is a lot of people will make it too much. Okay, they'll include too much in the frame, and when you do that, what happens is then people don't know where to look, and that's really what's going on. And not in this particular case, but in some pictures, I see photos of people. They take these pictures of people in a field, and it's this couple in a field, and there's this giant field around them, and the field has nothing to do with the photo. I don't know why they put them in a field, other than it's just kind of a generic or blank background. But my joke is, I don't know if they're waiting for aliens to land in that field, or whether they're building a house on that lot, and that's the play, and that's why they've shot the image there. But otherwise, the field has no bearing in telling the story. And so if it doesn't help tell the story, eliminate it. If it helps tell the story, include it. And I'm going to show you some examples of that in a minute. Okay, let me go back here. Make sure we don't have any other comments. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so let's look at the next image. The next one is this one right here. This one was submitted by MT, I think. In fact, and this is an image. It's kind of an interesting image. So you see a lot of people trying macro photography, okay, and this is a good example of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Macro photography is certainly an interesting subject, and something that a lot of people, you know, the thing about macro photography is that you don't have to have much equipment, and you don't have to you know, you don't have to have the best quality equipment, because you can still get a decent image out of what you know, just using a regular lens. I know some people that have photographed some macro stuff with just their stock 70 to 300, and the images are just stunning. So anyway, so let's look at this image a little bit and tell what I think's going on here. Technically, the image is a little overexposed, okay? It's a little hot in there, and it needs to be brought down a little bit. Exposure is a little bit. What's happening is you see all this, the darkness around there. The camera sees that, and the light meter sees that and says, oh, this image is a little dark. I need to raise the aperture, or ISO, or shutter speed, depending on the mode you're in. And so it tends to raise the exposure, so therefore the subject can be a little bit overexposed. It's not a lot. It's not enough that you can't recover this. You could do this pretty easily and still get some more texture in there. But the water is nice, because the water adds something new to the image. In fact, let me show you one more, because there's two images here. I think this one works a little better, actually. This one's a little stronger because it shows more of the leaf. You can kind of tell what's going on there. And I think that could be recovered. The hot spot could be recovered a little more. But I think it definitely has a couple things going for it. One of them would be it has definitely some shape to it, and it also has some texture to it. And so those are things that make the image work. You want to include texture if you can, if the image shows that. Now, one way to create more texture, by the way, is my favorite subject, and that is lighting. So if you look at this image, it's lit a little bit from the top left, it looks like. Okay? If you move that light, or you direct the light, if this is sunlight, if you direct the light so it's coming more of an angle, you'll get more shadow. You'll see more texture on the object. So that's one thing that's important to do, is when you're shooting something like this and you want to show that texture, make sure you're not lighting it too flat, too straight on. So if you move it to the left or to the right, if you're using your own lighting, that's a great way to control it. You can do the same thing with using some black foam core. Black foam core sometimes can be what's called negative fill, and that will also kind of create some texture on something like this. Because the thing is, you have just too much light and it's too flat, and therefore it doesn't show out the texture. But anyway, so I think you're onto something here. I think I would like to see this either a couple things. Number one, maybe a different angle if possible, or something else in the frame to help tell the story. There's not much of a story here. It's an interesting photo, and certainly it's a lesson in depth of field, a very shallow depth of field. But I'd like to see a little more texture on the leaf to make it work a little bit more and to bring out that. And you could also maybe punch up the color just a little bit to make it more interesting as well. But I see where you're going with this, and I think you're on the right track. I'd keep with it, stick with it, and see what else you can come up with. I should mention that, I was talking to somebody earlier this evening. They were asking me some questions. It was Jessica, and she was asking me, she's getting started, and she's like, how do I start? And my comment was, well, what is it you like to do? In other words, is there anything else other than photography that I like to do? What other hobbies do you have? And my advice to most people when you're getting started is to photograph something you already know something about. So if you don't have any hobbies, if your kids are your hobby, then do that. But so I was asking her, what are your kids' interests? So let's say, for example, they're interested in comic books or playing or swings or whatever it may be. Then, okay, try to tell a story, use them as your subject, and use what they're interested in to help tell a story. So, for example, what I didn't get around to telling her because I was trying to prep for the show was, if you're trying to photograph something and you don't know what to photograph, and you're trying to come up with a subject, and you're trying to find something that you can tell a story about. So if you're photographing children, for example, find out what they're into and then photograph them doing that. Tell me a story. So if I've never met your children, which I wouldn't have, okay, but you need to do a story on them to convince me to hire them as child actors or book them for a modeling shoot. I don't know what the application would be. I need to know something about them, okay? So therefore, use that as an example. What if there was a magazine and I was a magazine editor and said, hey, we're looking for a story on children that are really rambunctious, that are ADD or something. I don't know what, I'm just making stuff up here. So, but the thing is, and how would I convey that? How do you tell that story using those elements? So it's the same thing with the leaf here. What's the story behind the leaf? What am I trying to say with that? And I know it doesn't sound like it's a leaf. Come on, there's not much of a story. I get that. Try to make a story there. It's my point. Try to put something behind it that tells me something more than just in the image. So I hope that's what I'm trying to get at. So anyway, so that was my suggestion to Jessica, and I would make my suggestion to you as well. And I think that's why a lot of people start off doing landscape, because landscape is everywhere, your own backyard even. And it doesn't move, so you don't need to direct it. Stand up, stop, stay, tilt your head this way, do this. You don't have to do any of that, right, when you're photographing landscape. So I think a lot of people start with landscape. Obviously, they love it. It's beautiful to photograph, but it's also something that's available. And so what I'm trying to tell you is nothing wrong with that, but try and find something that you photograph if you're just getting started that you can tell a story about. And if it's a person, that's great. If it's a child, that's fine. If it's something you're interested in. So if you're interested, let's say, in bicycling, okay, my images may be technically better because I'm a better photographer or I've been doing this longer, but yours would be probably much better than mine as far as storytelling, because bicycling, I'm not a bicyclist. So therefore, you're going to know the people, you're going to know the sport, you're going to know more about it. And that's what I'm trying to get at. So photograph something you know, which will always help you in getting started quicker. So anyway, I hope that helps. I just felt like I've got off on a rant there for you guys. I apologize. Of course, I've never done that before. So Allie asked another question. Allie asked a question about Any pointers on creating a story in macro? Well, so here's one thing, Allie. It's a great question, Allie, by the way, because macro is typically very close up, and so there's not much room there, right? But if I were doing macro of an object, say I was, I don't know, doing say I was doing a macro of a phone, okay? Well, the phone, now it's got a surface and it's got something on it. That's one thing. But put something else in the frame that helps tell the story. Okay? Think of food photography or product photography. That's macro photography, right? So if you have an object like the leaf that was in there and you had something behind it, like, and I'm just going to make something up. Maybe this doesn't work for you guys. This is my own idea. So if I had cutting shears or something that went with gardening or growing in the photo with it, even if it's in the background and even if it's out of focus, it will still convey the story with it. So use some other element, I call them props, some other element in there to help tell that story. So depending on what it is, it could be anything, but even if, again, just put that in there and try and compose it so it draws the eye. It's not distracting, but put it in there so it's out of focus and darken, maybe behind the background, doesn't have to be dark, but in there, but it also helps to reinforce the story a little bit. So people go, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. It's gardening. She's a gardener, right? Because there's a leaf, or something like that. There's shears, cutting shears, or something that you've used in gardening. Now that helps tell a story. Now it fills in the gap. Otherwise, I'm kind of wondering, okay, why does this person take this photo? What's so important about this leaf? Is it a rare leaf? And I don't mean to be picking on this particular photo, the leaf, but I'm just trying to use that as an example. So anything like that, I've seen it in many cases on many macros. Does that help, Allie? I hope it does. But that would be one thing that I would do, is try and include one other element in there that helps reinforce the story. And I'm going to give you an example at the end of this here of some of my own work. I don't like, you guys, I don't like using my own photography as examples if you've been following me for a year or not. And the reason I don't do that, not that I'm not proud of my work or I don't think it's any good, it's because it's not about me, it's about you. And I want to look at your work. I want to help you with your work, not show off my stuff. But I thought tonight it might be appropriate because of a shoot I did not too long ago that was really all about storytelling. Okay. So hopefully that helped. Okay. So let's look at the next one. Okay, so this is an interesting one here. This was done by RJ, and RJ's only been shooting a year or less. And they really like photographing animals and dogs and things like that. Of course, dogs are animals, of course, right? But, horses and things like that. And the attempt here was to try and make the animals stand out. And so what they did, whoops, wrong one. It's not the right one. Where is that next picture? How come that didn't show up? Now my button's all messed up here. Okay, here we go. Oh, I see. Move it down here. There we go. Okay, so now this is the next photo. So this one, so if you notice, these are the same images, of course, right? Whoops. There's the one without the black background. There's the background. So what they told me was they're trying to make their images stand out more, take a realistic image, more of a portrait image, and really make the focus solely on the animal, on the dog. And that's really great. And I think they've done a pretty good job here because there's nothing else to look at, right? This would be a typical photo people would submit, say, charge for or whatever of an animal. And so if you look at this one, I'd say one of the issues with this photo is there's too much headroom. Okay, you'd want to crop that out a little bit. That draws the attention more toward the animal. But this definitely works. Now, where I think there's a little bit of room for improvement here is there's nothing wrong with the post-processing. There's nothing wrong with the darkening of the background, but it's a little too much in the bottom. So in other words, it looks a little bit like the dog's head is floating in space. And that can be a little disconcerting. So what you want is a little more of the background there. Ideally, you would be backlit or something like that, or you would include a little more of that shoulder on the left-hand side so that the dogs doesn't look like their head's floating in space. But other than that, it looks really nice. Again, your eyes are drawn right to the animal's face. There's catch lights in the eye. You notice the light in the eyes. That's great. That's what you want. Even if you are outdoors, if you're shooting this outdoors, and you don't have a flash, I would use a pop-up flash on your camera if you have it. And the reason is that even though you're not using that to necessarily fill in the shadows so much, it will just put a sparkle in that eye. You'll get a little bit of pinpoint light in the iris there in the eye just from having your pop-up flash. So you would use that for people as well. So I think you're on the right track here. Now, I'm going to be doing some lessons, some courses on lighting. I know you guys really want to know lighting, and lighting is my passion. I'm almost obsessed with it. I've probably mentioned that to you guys before. And I light everything I shoot, indoor, outdoor. Now, it might be because of the kind of work that I do, but I need to have total control over my environment. So what the point is, when you're using flash photography, most people don't realize that the shutter speed does not have any effect on the flash. So if you take your flash and you aim it at something, you get a subject there, and you get the exposure right. Let's say you start at 1/60th or 1/25th of a second, and you're shooting at f8 or whatever it may be. Okay, set your ISO. So you get an exposure properly. Let's say on this one right here, like we're using it. Okay. And then you crank up the shutter speed. What will happen is the background will get dark because the ambient light is being cut off, but the flash will be exactly the same. It will not affect the flash or the subject at all. And I've done this many, many times where I've gone into a corporate boardroom to do corporate headshots and they can't turn off the overhead lights. No problem, not a big deal. So I can shoot at 2/50th of a second or higher with the flashes that I use, and it will the room's completely dark. It's pitch black. And then I just turn on the flash, turn the flash up to expose properly on the subject, and I can make that background any brightness I want. The same as the opposite. If I've done some magazine and photo shoots where I wanted that back, didn't have much of a background, so it was a map behind the gentleman. I put him behind in front of the map, used a lower shutter speed and a tripod to be able to get that ambient light where I want it, and then I add the flash, and so I got both. I got the person properly exposed, and I have a background that I can control that ambient light. So that's really the trick in doing something like this right here, is you can do it in post, but it's very time consuming, and you don't have a lot of control because of the hair and things like that and the fur on the animal. So with using lighting and strobe, you can make that background as bright or as dark as you want. So hopefully that helps. Okay, and then there's one more that they submitted. This one is, they said that they were, again, it was just kind of a test. They're just trying to see if they can, using the darkening background, and I think this one was maybe more along the lines of using the ambient light, darkening the ambient light. I don't know if this was done in post-processing or not. It might have been. Looks like it could have been. Yeah, because of the stems and things like that. But if you start to learn to use flash a little more, and again, I'm going to be doing a class on this, you'll find that you can control that background just by using the shutter speed. So again, nice work on all. These are really nice. Nothing wrong with this at all. I'm sure if this was a pet owner, they would love this animal photo. But again, I would include a little more of just a little bit on the background, on the shoulders there to give a little more depth. And also so it doesn't look like it's kind of floating in space. But I think this is great expression. Got the dog's attention. And it might be a little soft technically, but that's okay. It's not that bad. And again, it depends on how big the print's going to be. But, I think we spend too much time worrying about that kind of stuff. If the photo has the expression and the emotion, then believe it or not, most people won't really care. If you look at a lot of the masters' work, that people consider masters, they're not the sharpest images in the world, so it's not always about that. So this one is pretty nice. Okay. Anyway, sorry, let me moving on. So this one here was submitted by, I think this one was submitted by, oh no, this one was submitted by WA. WA has been shooting about 2 years, and they really just kind of wanted something to contrast with the pink. So they were looking for a subject that was nice, warm, and be able to use something soft and serene. And I think this kind of accomplished that. It's a little, I'm not sure the composition could use a little bit of work on that one to make it a little more interesting. Let's see if I can bring this up here. I'll show what I'm talking about. But it definitely has the colors involved with it. Okay, so it definitely uses the value of color, and it also is using, again, space, the negative space on the left and the right, to show that depth. Now, what works about this image, by the way, is the fact that the yellow is in the color is in the background, and the pink is in the foreground, and the composition does give it some depth. Remember, we're taking photos of a 3-dimensional world with a 2-dimensional device, so we're trying to create and reproduce that depth. And that's going to make your images very, very interesting, especially if you're doing landscape photography. There's a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, and you kind of want to use those three together using focus or using color or light to be able to create that depth. And this image here does have depth to it by using the color and also the depth of field. But so as far as the images, it might be, I don't know if there was any more room over here on the right or not to allow some other space in here. And of course, they might have been cropping it to match because it said they were doing it for their computer background. So that might have been part of the issue there. I think you could also, just my own now this one is my own personal opinion. This is, I don't know how you want to, you may not like this, but you could also go and possibly go with a little more color on this kind of thing. Okay, boost it up a little bit more. And again, what you could do is, I'm a big masker here. I use a lot of mask. So what you could do is you could go in and mask this out and still keep the background a little bit darker and the background a little bit less vibrant, and make this foreground, keep it vibrant. But I think that might work a little bit more because there's more contrast between the two of them. But it's still, the one thing that kind of concerns me about the composition here is that it's a little too tight. And normally that's not my case. Normally I'm kind of the opposite. But so it could be nice if it could be moved in a little bit more to be able to maybe put this a little bit more like this. But again, it'd be nice if there's a little more space on the right, so it wouldn't be, because it feels to me a little crowded. I don't know if you guys feel that or not, but it looks a little bit crowded to me because this is so close to the edge, and that's a little better. But anyway, you guys get the idea. So, but it is still, still, I see where you're going with this, and I think it works on a couple of cases here. One of them being the use of color. So it's kind of with a little bit more boost in the color. I don't know if you guys can see that via video or not. But the composition maybe need a little more work there. It's something going on there, something about it I like that works with the composition. I'm just not quite sure what it is, quite honestly. So it's there's something I feel there that needs to be done. I just don't know what it is. And that sometimes is a the case with a lot of images. You kind of just have to keep working them and playing with them and trying them, not cropping them and post-processing. I'm saying sometimes I'm working around a subject, I'll see something there and I don't quite know what it is, and so I'll shoot it from one angle, I'll move another angle, wider, tighter, because you intuitively know something's going on, but you kind of can't figure out what it is you're trying to say, at least for me. And so sometimes I have to photograph things from different angles and kind of study them a little more and try some different things to see what works. And I think that's somewhat the case with this picture, this image right here. You guys might have heard me use this analogy before, but if not, it's very easy to get discouraged when we look at all of our images, right? Because it's like, what was this isn't very good. In other words, you can see you're trying something. You'll go through and you'll go, hey, I can see I was looking for something here, but I didn't hit it. It's not right. And my analogy is that's very much like someone that's writing a book or a novel, right? Or a screenplay. If you've read anything about screenwriting, you'll know that there's a whole formula for creating a character. And so when you're first writing a screenplay, you won't know, you'll kind of massaging the character. You'll get the basics of the character down, you get the background in there, and then you'll kind of start tweaking that character. So, well, they don't really have this, they need more depth in the character, they're not interesting enough, whatever it may be. It's very much the same thing with photography. So we're looking at a whole bunch of our images in thumbnails, and we see all the trials or all the blips, the bad ones, if you want to call them that. And it can be depressing. Like, God, I'm awful. What was the deal? None of these are any good. Maybe one of them is good. And that's because there's something there you haven't gotten in touch with yet. And you have to kind of just shoot over and over again to be able to do that. It's not easy to walk up to a subject and go, oh, here's the perfect angle. In fact, I would say that most of the time when I approach a subject from that angle, it's not the right angle. It's usually the last angle because I'm done, right? Okay, I got it. Excuse me. So you want to kind of keep working that subject, move around it, try different angles, see there's something there that draws you to that subject. You may not know what it is. You may not need to be in touch with it. So just keep trying. And I've told you guys this story before. I have had a number of projects. One of them I shot for 2 years. Every week I would go and photograph the same subject for 2 years. And it was a skate park that opened near my house. And I'd go down there every Tuesday and I'd photograph these skaters. And I got to know them and they knew me. And I'd shoot the typical guys in the air, and okay, that got boring. Then I'd bring lights down there. I'd do portraits of these guys, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, I ended up shooting some, I think I showed them a couple weeks ago, some images of just their feet. And that did it. I was like, okay, that's told the whole story. I didn't have to show the whole subject, and yet that made it work. And so you don't always know. And so by shooting the same subject over and over and over again, you tend to draw that out. And that's a great way to be able to learn how to see and how to tell a story. Because a lot of times we don't always know that when we first see it. Okay, anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to ramble on there. Let's see, I think we got a couple more, or one more at least. Okay, so this one here, this again was submitted by, I think this was submitted by LJ. And LJ's been shooting, this is the right one, about 5 years or longer. And so again, LJ, I would say that the technically the picture is nice, but I would say that again, I was looking at this earlier. I'll kind of show you some examples of what I think you could do here to make this a much stronger image. Okay. And that is, I think if you were to, again, instead of putting the subject in the middle, I think if you could do a lot better if you crop it a little bit like this, okay, because now I'm drawn more to the subject. Also, it adds to the dimension because now I'm seeing what's this bird looking at. Before, when they're in the middle, I kind of wasn't even really paying attention to that, okay? but I think that makes it a much stronger image by cropping it that way. This is an example of maybe where you add too much in the frame. And again, you could even, some people you might be, now the water may be important, you might want to leave that in there, but you could even go maybe even a little tighter. I don't know. You have to see here. But you have to play with it and see what works for you. When it gets to these kinds of things, I don't like to make too many suggestions because this is such a personal preference. It's going to depend on you and what you're trying to say. That might be a little too tight. But as you can see, by making it a little bit, cropping it, now look, I'm looking right at the bird's eye. I'm now looking at what's he looking at. All right, that's what I want to know. So all of a sudden, there's a little bit of a story going on here. Or before, it was just a bird there standing. They weren't eating, they weren't pecking at anything. They were just staring there. But now, because I can see their eye, because of the framing, this makes it a much stronger image. And now there's something I want to know more about. What are they looking at? What's going on? Do they see something to eat? Obviously, it's probably what they're looking for. Or is there a hunter or a person or they're afraid of? But that makes the image a lot more compelling, I believe. And it also helps with the composition and the rule of thirds there as well. So anyway, that's just an option on doing as opposed to this. Again, versus this, it's personal preference, but I believe I believe this one is a little stronger and a little more storytelling involved than this one right here. So I'd be curious what you guys think. All right, and I think I have just one more. Let's see. Okay, here's another one. This is really our last one. This was submitted by TJ. TJ's been shooting for 5 years, and this image is all about story. I mean, there's just it's just scream story. Okay, there's just so much going on there that you really can't help but see story in there. And what this TJ said was the purpose of this photo, the reason they took it was they're stopping time to remember the moments of pain, knowing that fire is a symbol of transformation. Now, that's pretty deep, and I don't know if everyone's going to come away with that, okay? That's the one thing about art. Everyone's going to have a different interpretation. But regardless of the interpretation you come away with, and whether you have the same interpretation that TJ does, it certainly is a compelling image, and it's really, really well done. Because, again, there's all kinds of story you can read into it. If you notice, the person's not in the center. They're overcropped to the right. They're telling the story by having some background in there, leading you over to that image on the right. The wood in the foreground there, the burnout wood, is even helping the composition break up the frame. So this image really works, in my opinion, and definitely is full of story. So anyway, I like this one. So this one has a lot going for it. Again, it also has a lot of, in the area of value, we call value, light and dark. So again, the dark helps add to the mood of the image, obviously. And it's certainly got texture to it. There's no doubt about that. The wood you can see there. And it also has the space, which again, the blank space on the left there draws your attention to the photo. And finally, you could even say that the lines here with the wood in the foreground help draw you to the image as well. And even the wood in the foreground by the subject's foot. So this image definitely has a lot of story to it, and I think it works on a number of levels. I don't know what it says. I mean, you have to interpret that on your own, but it definitely has story to it. Okay. Before I go to the last part here, any questions or comments you guys want to make on anything? You agree, disagree on my assessment on some of these things? Again, I'm not right or wrong. I don't try not to put too much of my own personal opinion in here, but I am trying to show you trying to share some of my background and on some of these images on how I think they could work or not work. And using these rule of thirds, using some of the composition and design tools, you have to decide whether that works for you or not, or whether you think I'm just all wet, which could be in many cases. So anyway, that's fine. I don't mind. Okay. So I don't see any questions, any other questions. So let me show you the last two images here. This last two images, okay. So this is, I'm going to show you these two images. Let me give you some background here. This was an assignment I had for a magazine, and they were doing the story was on pregnancy and ultrasounds. And so I brought up two images to show you, and I'm going to show you the two images, and I'd like to hear you guys your comments on this. But basically, it's a small area. And again, I keep telling you guys, I keep saying that the photography is a compromise. And I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying about this, but this is a good example. I'm in there. There's a doctor I'm photographing. There's not a lot of time. They're not going to be there all day with me. They're only there for, I had about an hour with them or less. And so it's a small area. I'm working in a very small, tight area. And it's not the best environment. There's not a lot of great background to help tell a story. So you're trying to make do the best you can with what you have to work with. That's my point. And that's what photography is all about. I know you've heard me say this, but that is, you never have enough time, you never have enough gear, you never have enough money, and you never have enough light all at the same time. Rarely do you have all those things at the same time. So that's the compromise. And this is what I ended up coming up with. So this is the photo. This is, again, it's a very small area here. I'm standing back behind a wall, or my back is to a wall, so there's not much room here. And this is a typical shot. It's not that great. Frankly, I don't like it at all, but it's not that great. But this is something I was trying to see how this would work. I didn't really care for the lighting that I was using my own lighting, and I didn't really care for it the way it was set up. But this is a good example. I could crop this a little bit and maybe make it work. But this is a good example of the kind of photos that I see a lot of people take over and over again. You got a lot of stuff in the frame, and it's just a wide shot. But this is the photo that one of the ones I submitted, and the one they ended up using in the article. And I think it works, because if you look at it, it still tells the story. It didn't have to show as much information, okay? It still showed that there was an ultrasound going on. It still you could still tell that there was a woman there, and that there was a doctor performing the procedure, and it gave them room both for type at the top and stuff like that. Somewhere I should have brought up the actual article. I could have showed you what it looks like in context, because it really makes a difference when you see how they use the image. But that's the difference between what I call an image that you think you're telling a story in, and then an image that I believe really does tell a story. So anyway, that's, again, that's not about me. It's not like this is great artwork here, or that these are fantastic images, but it's a difference between what image the client, being the magazine, selected versus which one told a story, and how to eliminate information, how to narrow that down. So instead of including too much information, you whittle it down to the most important aspects of that photo to help tell the story. Don't include too much, and just enough to be able to do that. So anyway, that's the point about that. So guys, reminder that if you're a social media person, we are on all the platforms, of course: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. If you're on YouTube, I'd love to have you guys subscribe to the channel. It'd mean a lot to me. So in lieu of sending $50,000, just go ahead and like the channel, and that'll be equivalent. So. And then also, I want to remind you that we do have a Facebook group. If you're interested in joining our Facebook group, you can go to photomentor.tv/join. We'll ask you a couple of questions about, what kind of stuff you're interested in learning, and your name, and just so we can filter out, make sure it's not spam, and we'll submit. And then you'll go to the group, you click the join button, and then that'll send me an email, and I'll go ahead and notify you guys, let you in, and love to have you join us there. So anyway, I think that's about it for this week. Listen, you guys did a great job, by the way. I got to thank you. You really stepped up in your submission, and I hope that my feedback is helpful because I really, really enjoy looking at your work. I love seeing your progress, and there's no right or wrong. As I said before, this is not a contest. I do this to help you. I give this to give you feedback. One thing that frustrates me is I see so many people submit images on these Facebook groups and they get comments on them or likes, but there's no valuable information there. It's just like, oh, this is great. I love this sunset. Well, that's okay. Is it good, bad? How do I improve it? And that's the whole purpose of this, doing this on the first Friday of the month. So appreciate it. Thank you very much. And listen, if you have any comments, please leave them in the comments below on Facebook or YouTube. Love to hear what you guys have to say. And thanks again. And hey, don't forget, keep shooting.